project is finished. The project is finished and we're ready to move on to the next piece. But one of the things that I've really learned from you in doing this piece of work with you is how important the sharing of the learning is. And that is kind of very, very much a part of the work. I wonder if you want to say something about that.
Yes, so I work for a foundation. I work for a funder, and essentially what we do is we distribute, we give grants, we distribute funds. And if you're doing that work, you really need to know where it's landing, how it's landing, what's working, what's not working. And as you learn that, it's so important for us that learning, even like clearly this conversation is about impact and the difference that work is happening on the ground. And that is obviously critical. From our point of view, figuring out how you got there, what worked as you were trying to make that difference in the world, what worked for you, for your participants, beneficiaries, end users, whatever it was, and then what worked in the relationship between yourself and your funder. All that really matters, because if we just keep doing it in the same way, we'll just get the same change, won't we? And we all know that. So what we're trying to do is really understand what happened here. What were the things that worked well that we should really do again? What are the things that actually, had we done it differently, life would have been much easier? I have many, many, many of those examples. And also, what was it that was, from your point of view, the most use from the people that are delivering it? What was the most useful learning for you? Not necessarily for the participants, because we'll have that in the evaluation reports or in the impact, but what was important for you, for your team, for the way that this work happened? Because that's the way that we understand how you're developing your organization, what you want to do differently next time. So for us, all that, just I've only really realized this is my first job in a funder, and all my career I've been hustling for money. But now that I've got here, I've realized how important it is that if funders don't spend time pulling out that learning, we are just going to be writing checks. And and who knows?
My thing is, Radhika, that I've been doing this kind of work for a while, and I've always thought at the end of a piece of work, you look at what it is the funder says that they want at the end, and you make sure you tick the boxes, you get it to them as quickly and as efficiently as possible, and you get away from them, unless of course you want some more money. And the idea that the learning, that the evaluation of the work has any more meaning than that is in a way quite a revelation to me. Not in this moment, but in recent years has become a revelation to me that it's not just about satisfying the needs of a funder, but it's actually about something different.
Yeah, understanding the process. I think that's what I think, you want to understand what happened. And I think that idea, I too spent a lot of time just giving, if the funder said pears, I gave them pears. Even if I delivered oranges, I would find a way to make those oranges look like pears. And but I now realize that meant that I wasn't, me and my team didn't really reflect on what we had done, because we're now so busy trying to make it look like oranges. We haven't really looked at the pears. And so I didn't help my team to understand what happened. I didn't really understand why did we end up getting pears when we were trying to get oranges. Like none of that. We didn't spend any time on that. We spent time on making sure that we delivered what we thought we were going to deliver when we wrote the proposal 3 years ago.
But don't we lose brownie points?
I really don't think so. So certainly not with the funders that I know well, which is the one that I work at and the ones where now I have friends. Because I think we know that the work is not going to be what we think it's going to be today, and what we will end up with in a year, 2 years, 3 years, and that is going to be different, because the world is so different. We know that in our lives. So the impact is going to be different. And so the key thing is that we understand what happened, not that, oh, it was different, oh dear, we started with that, or we went to do oranges, now we end up with pears, whatever it is. It's not about, obviously there's a difference in outcome, but like what were the things that contributed to that, so that we can then figure out, were they things that was that something that we want to replicate? Was that, because if we ended up with a better outcome because of some circumstance, because happened to recruit somebody from a particular community, or you brought in somebody who had a particular expertise. Do you know what I mean? Those things happen, and it used to happen to me in my work. And then suddenly the project would go off in a slightly different way. And but that's a really important learning, isn't it? To realize actually we need to make sure we have that sort of skill in the team from the outset next time if we want to get to this outcome. So that the learning about what happened as well as actually what happened are the two things that we're really interested in. And I think funders are like that now.
So Alison, one reason for kind of going through this process of seeing our work, of evaluating our work, is in order that we can learn from it, and that we kind of present it in its reality rather than doing what Radhika describes as giving people apples when actually we produced pears.
Yeah.
Are there any other, is there any other value in going through the process of, yeah.
So I think just reflecting on what Radhika was saying, I think there's something about there are still funders and organisations that want that kind of monitoring and evaluation, old-fashioned information, and I think we can provide that, and I think we have to provide that. In the work that I'm currently doing at the moment in Liverpool, working with the Liverpool City Region Race Equality Hub, and we've got a monitoring and evaluation framework that says these are the targets that we said we were going to meet. This is how we're going to do it, and these are the numbers. What I'm more interested in is the so what. So some of the challenges and issues that we're dealing with in the Liverpool City region connected to racism, for example, are that Black-led businesses are not accessing the support that's out there. So yes, we've got loads of targets about how many Black businesses are seen and all of that, and we can monitor that, we can track that. What I'm interested in terms of impact is when we've gone, how confident do those Black-led businesses feel to be able to access, to contact, to get involved with those kind of business as usual services and benefit in the way that they should. So for me, it's about the so what, and the so what is based on what do the communities that you're working with see as the success factors, because too often we develop projects and programs and bids for funding without really understanding what does success look like for the communities that we're working with. And so that's why we have to look at impact, because success for communities isn't quite often bums on seats or how many apples have been picked or whatever. It's much bigger than that.
And so your impact, so there's a difference then, you say, between your kind of evaluative process, or what you're evaluating, and finding your impact.
Yeah, absolutely. And so one of the things, and I can see on the call, I've got I have an advisory board, and one of my board members is on the call. So for me, there are different tools and techniques that we need to use, and at the moment we're just exploring how can we assess impact by using more creative tools and techniques, and we haven't got there yet. Or that conversation hasn't been concluded. But how can we involve, in our case, Black, Asian, minority ethnic communities in helping to define what success looks like, and helping us to work through what are the best tools, what are the best ways of engaging with our communities to assess that success or not. So
let me understand. So your kind of evaluation process is a kind of look back at the project and say, did the things happen that we thought were going to happen? And if not, what did happen?
Yeah.
You know? And that's kind of part of your evaluative process.
Yeah.
But beyond that, you need a process. Beyond that, you need a process that you call your impact process.
Yeah.
And in your impact process, you're looking at what?
We're looking at what is the longer term change that happened as a result of, I don't know, employing 5 more Black business advisors, or what was the change that happened longer term because we worked with the DWP and tried to encourage them to work in a way that was more inclusive. So not just the people who in the next 2 years as part of this program benefited, but actually what about the rest of the community who we haven't touched during this time? So we can count them. We can count how many people went through an employability program. We can count how many Black businesses benefited. We can count them, and we can say, yes, they benefited based on the evaluation in the way that Radhika described. What we need to better understand is has that actually touched other people who haven't been part of these programs as yet, and will it touch them in the future? And as Radhika said, a big part of it is also the learning. So what worked and why, and what didn't work. For us in the Liverpool City region, we're doing quite a lot of what we call test and learn. And so it's really important to understand the processes, so that, for example, if we target some money on an intervention that's supporting Black businesses and we learn some things from that, then we need to be taking that learning into the broader business ecosystem, into the business as usual, and be saying this is how you need to work, because actually this has a positive effect on Black-led businesses, for example.
And so Maxine, I think it's Maxine Davis, has put a question in the chat that I think kind of begins to link to what we're saying now. So that our evaluation process is a process of kind of looking and saying what happened, why did that happen, how did that happen? Yeah. That our impact process is about saying what, I'm trying to find a word other than impact, what change was brought about as a result of the work that we did, and how do we measure and know the change that was brought about by the work that we did.
Yeah.
And so how does that then, either of you, both of you, somebody help me, how does that then link to, I suppose, our aspirations as an organization? Or as in the question, it says, how does that then link to our theory of change?
So in my work, we've got a theory of change, and our vision is about we want to support the economic advancement of Black, Asian, minority ethnic community members in the Liverpool City region. That's our vision. That's the work that we want to do. And so we know through kind of standard monitoring evaluation that there probably will be some success in terms of the economic advancement of those Black, Asian, minority ethnic community members that are part of the programme. Because we'll have their names and addresses, won't we? We'll be able to see them, we'll know them. So that's the kind of bog standard monitoring evaluation. For me, it's about what are the questions we need to ask, and how do we need to ask the questions that show that the economic advancement is broader than just the people who've touched the programme.
Radhika, you've got your hand up.
Yeah, I wanted to say that, yes, absolutely, that it's that wider, the change beyond the immediate and what you can see, but also in this thing about looking for impact, recognize that impact takes quite a long time. It's quite a long journey before you see the actual change. A lot of the work we're doing has these ambitious goals, like the ones you just described, Alison, really ambitious goals. And please, we need to get there, but we're not going to get there in year one. We're not going to get there in year two. These are all. So then one of the things is to figure out what are the steps. What is between here and economic advancement of Black businesses in Liverpool, where we are now and where we want to be? What are the steps towards it? And some of that will be the types of finance that's available. Have we increased the amount, or the types of opportunities that are available, the types of cushioned resources that are available, so there may be. So one of the things for me about impact is that you recognizing that it's quite a long way down the line, the big change you want to make. So identifying and figuring out what are the smaller changes that are along the way, and those will change. So also, like in all this work, to be conscious that the indicators, don't be rock solid on them. Don't keep chasing. You said this was gonna be, that you were gonna get more soft loans to your Black businesses. That's what you set out to do. Turns out there was an economic crash. Nobody was going to give soft loans. And does that mean but then you have to say, oh no, we can't be counting that, because that's not what's been happening in the last year. There's been something else happening. Let's count that, or let's explore that and understand that. So you do need a team that are confident enough to be able to flex and move. And I think that's what funders have not done. Funders have de-skilled people, are at risk of de-skilling people by saying, you need to be doing the thing that you said you were going to do, and we're not really interested in the other stuff. Because actually our people, the people on the ground are really skilled. They're doing all sorts of juggling and moving. That's what what delivery on the ground is like, full of creative people who are having to adapt as things move and as the context changes. And we are not capturing those things often effectively enough, because we're still going after the first thing. So I think that thinking about working out what are the steps that between where we are now and where we want to get to, and putting those in pencil into your theory of change, and being ready to flex those if and when needed.
So somebody's put a question in the chat, but before you answer it, some people have joined the conversation after we started it, so they don't know who you are, and I just wondered if you could just very briefly introduce yourselves again.
I'm Radhika. I'm Radhika, and I work at Impact and Urban Health. We're a London-based funder.
And I'm Alison Navarro. I'm the Programme Director of the Liverpool City Region Race Equality Hub.
Okay. And the question that's been asked in the chat is about the kind of co-production of evaluation and impact assessment with funders. Is that something that's possible to do? Is that something that's happening?
Yes, I mean, we all say we're very keen on co-production, don't we? So you see it in every bid and everything, you all have to do it. In practice, we know that co-production is really hard and it's expensive. So I think one of the things is to be a little bit more humble about how much genuine production you can do with the budget that you have. Because if you're going to bring people into the space, if you're going to engage communities, residents, whatever we call it, but the people, you're going to engage the people in helping to figure out what is the change we want to make, how are we going to monitor, figure out what that change is, what are the, what is it people really want? Well, that requires a bit of time, and we want to pay them for their time. We want that for that experience to be really positive for those people. All that is quite expensive. I think it's it's resource intensive work. So one of the things that I worry about co-production is it's very easy to say, and we've all been part of, and we are aware of really poor co-production where you get people get a few people into the room, pass around a few post-its, put a few things on some flip charts, and you've done it, And obviously, and I think for the people, I've been in those processes. I've been the person that's had to, and it's so unsatisfactory. You walk away from that room and you think, what was that about? What did I get from that? What did I get? So yes, I think co-production is really, really important, because if we don't bring people in to help us to figure out what it is they want, what are the ways, what are the impact, what is the change they want to see, and how do they want that change to be delivered? I mean, we all know this, they have loads of ideas, they have lots to say, but if we don't engage with that, we're going to be, the work is going to be much poorer for it. But I want to say, be a little bit more, lower how many amazing things you're going to write into your bid that you're going to do in a co-production way, because it's expensive and resource intensive.
So let me tell you what I think I understand from what I've heard. What I think I've understood from what I've heard is that that the evaluation process and the impact process are two slightly different things. That the evaluation process is the process of kind of looking back at what you've done and saying what's worked, what hasn't worked. Do I need more apples or do I need more pears? But then there's a kind of impact process, which is about looking beyond what you've done, really, and saying, how has this hit in the world? If you'd started off wanting to make sure there were 20,000 televisions brought into London on the 5th of every month, that maybe there haven't been 20,000 televisions brought into London but maybe there have been 15,000 televisions and 200,000 of something else, or maybe other things have happened, maybe unexpected things has happened. But what you want to do is you want to be able to see how you've touched the world through your work. And in particular, you want to be able to see, how you've touched the things that are important to you in your work, such as your theory of change, such as your kind of vision for your practice, such as the change that you want to see in the world, and that your impact is about, how have I touched those things? How have I made those things different through the work that I've been doing? You've got a hand up, Alison.
Yeah, so I think they are different things, but I think they are part of the process. So I think, if we're not collecting evidence and information, through our monitoring, then that makes it difficult to understand the immediate impact or the immediate change that we might have had. And if we haven't got that information, then doing that kind of longer term, as Radhika described, that longer term, actually, have we made any difference, is harder without the information. So I think that they're kind of part of a process. I just wanted to pick up something someone's just said in the chat, if that's okay. So it's Maxine says, in my experience, there can be a contradiction, antagonism between how the BME organisation understands change and how funders assess, evaluate and recognise change. Would you agree? And I absolutely agree. And I think for me, that goes back to the co-production piece. There's absolutely something about whether it's about black people or whether it's about, other community members. There's absolutely something about, and I know that you've done that with Radhika, Ubele and Radhika have done this. Think about having the people who are supposed to be the ultimate beneficiaries in the space, in the room, because I think that they can shout louder quite often than people working in organisations about what change looks like, what processes are working well, what are not working well. And so I think from that point of view, if you can co-produce, and I think Radhika's right in terms of the kind of the warn and bells, I think that gives more power to the ultimate beneficiaries.
Thanks for joining us, Ezra. Because you joined us at exactly the right moment, because Alison or Radhika, I've forgotten which, it might have been both of them, started talking about the about the need to collect that data to be able to evidence the impact that you say that you've had. I wonder, you've had some experience of doing this, Ezra.
Okay, I'll preface that by a few comments. I would like us to consider the differences. As Alison said, all of them are related to or contribute to or inform the impact process. But as a practitioner, we need to be clear on the differences. So there's monitoring, there's evaluation, there's our achievements, there's impact. And for all of them, we need to collect data. And in my experience, too often we think of the data at the point at which the question of evaluation or review or monitoring or measuring is asked. From the outset, we need to be thinking about the evaluative process, which takes in all of it. So what are we collecting? Why are we collecting it? And to my mind, some of the reasons. So at a very basic level, we want to be able to gauge how we are spending our time and how we are spending the money and the other resources. So even if nobody's asking the question, as a professional, we need to be able to answer those questions. So when we go to bed, what have we done today? How has it landed? Why did we do it? Is it working? All those questions need to be thought about from the outset and as we go along. Another purpose would be to learn from what we're doing so that we learn, but also on how we can improve for next time, or how we can share the learning with somebody else. And another reason, well, to share with colleagues, but also to share with people outside of the organization, and to share with senior leaders. I'm talking about a practitioner, face-to-face kind of worker. What it is we're going to say to our line managers or to the board or whoever it is we report to. And the outside stakeholders, outside in inverted commas, like the funders and the other strategic partners. And also to use the information to leverage further funding for maybe a continuation of the project or something the project pointed out that is as critical as what we were focused on, but there's no funding for it. We need to be able to use the information, the learning that we just experienced to be able to do that. For all of that, we need to collect data, and we need to collect data from day one. And it's not a negotiable. It's not an add-on. Unfortunately, for many projects, that is not built in to the funding. For many practitioners, they are more comfortable doing than documenting. The documenting doesn't have to be a report. There are lots of different ways that we can document. So for me, the initial conversations, in my experience, is the most critical, because by the time the question is asked, lots of time has passed, and some people have left. And if you don't have a very robust reporting and monitoring system, some of the information is lost.
So I'm understanding the importance of collecting this data. I'm seeing how this data has a relationship with our mission. I'm seeing how this data has a relationship with the success of our organization. You know, it is a method for levering in more money to do more things if we can show the success and the impact of the last thing that we did. How do we collect this? What does this data look like, Ezra? Sorry, Ezra, do you just want to introduce yourself before you ask the question? Because I forgot
Yes,
to ask you to do
okay.
it. Yeah.
I'm Ezra Blondel, and I work with Ubele as the Impact and Learning Manager.
Okay.
And that involves me collecting data, analyzing data, reflecting what I see the data is suggesting, what it's and some of the challenges, helping the organization to address some of the challenges in data collection. There are
So
many challenges.
what sort of data do you collect then for Ubele?
Okay. Well, Ubele has last year we engaged with about 28 different projects, and the data I collect is mainly around evidence to reflect the impact Ubele is having in relation to its main aim or its vision. Ubele is about empowering communities to advocate for a better life for Black people. And the projects that we offer are contributing to that. So every year.
What is the actual data that you collect then? Are you collecting
Okay, so we
numbers?
collect.
Are you collecting stories? Are you collecting?
Yeah, we collect stories. We collect information on activities. We collect information on different initiatives that we undertake. And we ask beneficiaries, the projects ask beneficiaries to comment on how they benefited, in what ways they benefited. We conduct interviews, we collect attendance data. Some projects would have a survey or focus group to have conversations around what it is they wanted to achieve, how far they think the project has achieved that. And my role is to condense all that rich information into stories about each project, what it is they said they wanted to do, what they actually did, what value did they add to the lives of the organizations they work with, what value did they add to the lives of the individuals with whom they work, and so what? So more people are feeling confident in the universities. So what? What difference does that make to anything? And that's where the impact comes in. Now, one of the challenges of measuring impact is that, as both Alison and Radhika said, impact is a longer term kind of assessment. You may feel the impact of it 2 or 3 years down the line. A piece of legislation, so Ubele might advocate for a piece of a policy change with funders, for example, or policy change with the government. A law is enacted, a policy is changed, and the effect of that policy or law change is not immediate. Sometimes 2 or 3 years down the line, it's inevident, but the workers have gone, the project funding is finished, and you need to find ways of collecting the data to demonstrate impact. If that is thought about at the beginning of the project, it can be factored in. So for example, it could be that there is a survey done of the beneficiaries 2 or 3 years down the line because the organization is still in existence, for example. Yeah.
And so Ezra, the types of data that you need to collect in order to then see your impact is just some of it is kind of really quite basic stuff, like
Yes.
how many people attended, who were they, how did they, how did they get there, why did they come, that sort of information. Yeah. The other thing that you might want to collect are some stories of the people that came and how they experience the thing that you created for them to come. And so that forms another part of your data. And then later on you might be collecting data on, well, I wonder how that impacted on different people. I wonder what they're doing now. I wonder if they're relating that experience to their kind of current existence and how are they doing that. And that would be your impact. Yeah.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And that you need to build in those mechanisms for finding out those things as part of your grant application, as part of the process of your organization. And with an organization like Ubele, and we've become, in relative terms, quite a big voluntary organization, that kind of becomes a little easier to do because we can employ somebody called Ezra Blondel who has that specific responsibility.
Yes.
And we can talk about the difficulties you suffer trying to get information out of me at another time.
But there are lessons here.
What about with small organizations that just have 1 or 2 workers doing work, who are kind of hard pushed to get work done? How can they simplify this? And why can they commit some of their hard-earned energy to making sure it happens?
There has to be a paradigm shift for everybody, that we need to feel the importance of assessing what we do. Our people have been doing forever and ever and ever. Before Ubele and before all the organizations that are with us on the core, we have been working and doing and doing and doing. My question to all of us is, where is the legacy of what we've done, the impact? Some of it we can see, but is the volume of it documented in the same proportion as the doing?
Right.
We cannot afford as a people to continue the same as and say we don't have time to evaluate or measure or whatever. We need to find ways of doing it. And one of a very practical way for Ubele and any organization is that at the outset of employment, that is one of the things that is discussed.
And so part of the bigger picture in kind of creating kind of a systems change within the Black community is to make sure that we are documenting what we're doing, that we are leaving those documents are there and available to those who come after us. And these kind of impact assessments, this way of thinking about your work, helps to provide that. Radhika, you had your hand up.
Yes.
And then I want to start talking with Phil, who's here.
The only thing I wanted to add to that is that to try and be specific about the particular things you're interested in. that this work is doing. You can't count everything, particularly if you're a small team. You haven't got the time, you haven't got the resources. You can't count everything, and you can't capture every story. But I think so. It's about identifying from the outset what, as the team that are delivering this piece of work, what are the things that we are really interested in. And so for me, I think that the thing that I tried to do and would try to do more now is to make it part of the culture of the work, that capturing what's going on is so important for us, not because of the funder, because I don't think that's enough of a motivation. I just think, who cares? Like, you care at the end, but the delivery team don't really care about the funder. They've left that to somebody else to worry about. I think what the delivery team care about is what difference their work is making on the ground. They're motivated by what they're doing. They're concerned about the people, the young people, the whatever it is that they're working on. And so I think it's about creating a culture which says we really care about this, and we're going to find out what it is so that we can do it better. And I think that thing about impact, collecting data and gathering information in order that we can improve the next time we do this, like we're running this set of workshops or whatever it is we're doing this time, the only way we're going to do it better next time is not by just repeating the same thing, but by figuring out what worked this time and what we need to change. So for me, there's a sort of culture piece about the types of conversations we have in our teams, the types of leaders that we recruit for our teams, that hunger to learn and hunger to understand, because that way we will do it better next time, because we are motivated by making a difference on the ground. Everybody in our sector is they could all be earning more money doing something else. They're all doing this work because they're really motivated by making a difference to communities and to people, or to the end user on the ground. And so to turn the capturing of the data, to plug that in to helping them to do their job more effectively, to make a bigger difference in the world.
So we need to collect the data. We need to go through this evaluation process. One, not number one, but one of the reasons is that we need to say to the people that gave us money, this is what we did with your investment, and this is what it looks like. Another reason for wanting to go through that process is because we need to learn from what we're doing, and we need to understand what has worked, what hasn't worked, what has brought us towards the change that we want to make in the world, and what has taken us away from that change. Another reason that I hadn't thought about until Ezra raised it today was just that kind of creating history, that creating history of the work that Black people are doing across the country, in terms of community work, in terms of developing their communities, in terms of creating lessons for the people that come after us to be able to pick up and say, this happened, this is what it looked like, this is what I can learn from. Bill, how you doing?
I'm well, thank you. Fascinating conversation.
Right, good. I hope that you've been enjoying, because I kind of want to bring it back to Agbero in a way. Yeah. And so there's kind of two things for me in bringing it back to Agbero. One is, how much support can Agbero give to the organizations involved in Agbero with this process of collecting data, of preparing themselves to be able to show their impact? What is the support that we'd be able to give to those organizations through the work that we're doing? And the second question is, how will we know? Because we kind of have a theory of change for Agbero, don't we? And we have a kind of systemic change that we're trying to create in the world. And I'm wondering how we'll know whether or not we're achieving it, what we can do really to kind of measure the impact of Agbero. And so in either order, I don't mind which order you kind of want to take them in, but I thought I'd save the most difficult questions till last.
Right. First questions first. So we had over 132 organizations registering through the expression of interest to the Agbero program. And because of budget limitations, we were only able to take 450 organizations into a series of masterclasses and online training, and from that 50, 32 will be getting the assessment, some bespoke support around the assessment, and then that kind of pre-support, post-support assessment. So kind of 132, 50 down to 32. So we recognize that there will be some groups that, particularly the ones that aren't in the 50, that won't be getting support directly. So that's why we've designed the Agbero live programs. And based on the comments and the questions that people are putting in the chat, and please, for those organizations that aren't originally in the 50, please put questions in there around topics in this particular area, so we can think about how we can support you more generally around this particular area. For those 50 organizations that are in the kind of phase 2 and phase 3 program, then there will be a number of webinars, masterclasses and training, 2 sessions, about 90 minutes a piece, and there will be on kind of impact series of masterclasses. So we're going to be going out to procure some consultants to deliver them very soon. So all participants here you'll hear about that. So we will be providing those bespoke particular sessions for training and online masterclasses. And then of the 32 that do get the assessments, there'll be some scope to do some to receive some additional consultancy days for specific work around kind of impact measurement. So that was your first question. In terms of the kind of Agbero and its kind of impact and theory of change, I want to go back a little bit and just to talk about, well, actually, what do we mean by theory of change? And sort of very simply, it's a comprehensive description, an illustration of how and why a desired change is expected to happen in a particular context. So what's key is about how and why. We don't talk about what you do, we talk about how that has made an impact on a particular community or group or organizations that you're supporting. And the why bit is really around linking that back into your purpose. The work that we're doing within the Community Wealth Building Hub and how that relates to Agbero is that broadly the work that we are within Community Wealth Building is based on the CLES principles. So I think that's the Centre for Learning and Economic Studies, and they've got 5 general principles which our work broadly aligns with, and that's about things to do with the economy and different types of businesses. It's about kind of making financial power work in local places, around employment, just and fair employment, things around procurement and public services, and then assets, buildings and land, how are they used productively. And the work that we're doing within the hub, and particularly around how we're defining kind of community wealth buildings based on that, and it's an iterative process. And what was interesting is in Lisbon, if I may, last year we did an exercise where we asked our communities that attended that trip to describe what they saw and did in their communities. And what was interesting was that what was on the post-it notes broadly aligned with those 5 CLES principles. There was some work to be done there around language and accessibility of language, but there was this kind of other category, and all the post-it notes that were in this kind of six spread flip chart had to do things with intergenerational work, leadership, the idea of kind of succession and handing the baton forward to future generations, community development and community power and activism. And it's that kind of thinking that we've taken forward into how we've designed the Agbero program or strategic intervention. And the vision really is around sort of building kind of equitable economic power and sustainable wealth within our communities, and developing and building out on those CLES principles. And in terms of the process of designing a theory of change, absolutely, context is key. What is your geographic context, your cultural context, historical context? Who are the people that you're working with? And we've talked about, stakeholders, but beneficiaries. So the people that you are, not wanting to do things to, but do things with, asking them what matters to you. How can things be better? And so using those workshops to get a sense of what types of interventions and support could work. So that kind of context analysis, understanding barriers and opportunities, other partners and stakeholders that you could work with, then helps you think about, well, the theory of change itself in terms of inputs. So what are the resources, funding, money, space, expertise, community assets that go beyond buildings and land, organizations, individuals, the natural environment, those types of things. What assets already exist in our community? So moving away from that kind of deficit-based approach, you know, what are the activities, the programs, the initiatives, the interventions that we're going to deliver through the intervention? So, you know, Agbero, we've got a series of, you know, we've got Agbero Live, we've got masterclasses, we've got training, we've got an assessment, and then some bespoke support. What are the outputs? What happens as a result of that? So, you know, bums on seats. So 132 in the expression of interest, 50 go into the program, 32 get the assessments. We'll know how many days of support they get, all of those types of things, how many people attended workshops, very simple, countable, immediate types of information. Those are the outputs. The interesting stuff comes next, which is what's the change? You know, what are the outcomes? What are the things that happen as a result of the webinars, the training, the masterclasses, anywhere between 3 to 5 days worth of consultancy support? You know, over what period of time are we going to be assessing those? And then how does that feed into that longer term vision or goal, the ultimate goal, purpose of what we're trying to achieve in Agbero? And what's important that, you know, within the outcomes, people talk about hard outcomes, soft outcomes, short-term, medium-term outcomes. But the most important thing, and Ezra alluded to this, is about indicators, ways of knowing. So how do you know that you've improved confidence with a particular? So I could make a judgment, but you know what? Why don't I just ask in our design workshop, actually, how does confidence look like to you? What does that change look like to you? So those will be the types of things that we will be looking in terms of what those indicators look like, and the different types of indicators depending on what types of sectors and activities. And just one final point is that we're going to make assumptions. You have to make assumptions. So you need to validate those assumptions. The assumptions between, you know, the activities, the outcomes, and the kind of longer term changes and impact. And by assumption, what I mean is, what are the things that need to be in place for that change to happen? So, you know, is it that you need space? Is it that you need trainers? Is it that you need external partners to be involved? And then you think about, well, what then do we need to do to ensure that those things happen? So you're mitigating, you're making sure that, yes, we've made some assumptions, and this is where it could go wrong, and this is what we need to make sure we need to do to make sure that we create the best environment for those outcomes to happen. And then we get into sort of monitoring, evaluation, the ways of knowing. So we talked about, you know, counting, you know, surveys, feedback forms, capturing stories, you know, infographics, pre and post assessments, so distance traveled, you know, outcome stars. So lots of different types of tools out there that you are ways of knowing that help you understand that a change is taken place. And then finally, you know, communicating and advocating, sharing that. So throughout the process of, you know, the Deliver Agbero, and as we are collecting information, we will be sharing that with you know, with our cohorts, with the people that we're working with. But being able to actually share that information, being transparent and saying, you know, this is where it worked well, and in fact, this is where it worked less well, and then being able to feed that back into the kind of the design of future programs. So a bit of a spiel, and I'm winding it up, but hopefully that's answered both your questions, Michael.
This kind of finger going around isn't asking you to wind it up, but it's kind of seeing what I think I've heard through this conversation, that this process isn't a single process, but is part of a kind of this is supposed to be cyclical, whatever that word is, a circle of of activities. And those activities, I'm really glad that you brought this in, Phil, because those activities often start with our best hunch. You know, that I know so many workers in the field, and you'll say, well, how do you know that's the best thing to do? I could just feel it, Michael. I know my community. I've worked here for years. I know that this is the best thing to do. Yeah? And the what we're saying is trust that hunch, trust your professionalism, trust who you are, to make that initial engagement, to do that initial thing. But then be rigorous about knowing that it's working. Be rigorous about saying, is this having the effect that I wanted it to have? What do I need to do with my best hunch to make it even more effective? And we do that on a number of levels, and the different levels that we do it on give us different outcomes. You know, Ezra talked about doing it as an individual in order to kind of satisfy ourselves that we've done a decent day's work. She talked about doing it as an organization in order to make sure that the organization is meeting its aims. We talked about it in terms of pieces of work and making sure that pieces of work are doing what we want them to do. We talked about testing it at a really local level, but we've also kind of want to test it against our biggest aims, against the biggest ambitions for our organization. We want to end racism. We want Black people to be the most powerful race on the earth. We want all of these things. Is this action contributing to that? And if it is contributing to that, where can we see it? Where is the change that's happening as a result of it? It's 7:30, and so I've got to say thank you, Radhika. Thank you, Ezra. Thank you, Phil. Thank you, Alison, for joining in this conversation. Thanks to everybody that came along and stuck questions in. I know, I hope, I'm thinking that somebody will kind of go through that web chat and make sure that we've responded to the questions that have been asked. I don't know how we'll do it, but it's something that I'm learning today as something that we need to be doing. Maybe we create a Q&A sheet at the end of each of these webinars and just kind of send it out to everybody, because there are some really good questions that an hour doesn't give us time to kind of do justice to. But thanks very, very, very much, everyone. Thanks for the time that you've given us to this evening. And I look forward to seeing you in a fortnight-ish time, when the next one we're going to do is going to be about something Phil's just about to tell me. Or don't we know yet, Phil?
No, I can tell you it's around financial resources. So we're going to be trying to manage a balance between the kind of technical aspects of things to do with sort of things like cash flow and those kind of nitty-gritty financial things that we need to be considering, but then also to think a bit more globally on a more macro scale about actually the system and the context that we're operating in, and you know, how can we think more differently about the types of wealth that exist, how we can bring those into our communities, and how we can try to avoid aping and regurgitating kind of previous models and paradigms and ways of doing. So that's going to be, I think, an interesting one.
Thanks very much, everybody. I'll see you all in 2 weeks' time. Thank you. Good night.
Good night, everyone. Bye-bye.
Bye.